Let's preview tonight's Spurs Wizards game. What is the Spurs blueprint? Let's take some of your Locked On Spurs fan comments.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Hot Rod.
And I'm RC from the Cybertronic Spurs.
And you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you all back. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all had a great, restful weekend, and that week as well. Get through it. And we thank you for being an everydayer and coming here to Locked On Spurs, your first and only stop for all things San Antonio Spurs. Subscribe on YouTube, Ken's 5 Plus app, iTunes, Spotify, the list goes on and on. Hey, what are we talking about today? We're going to be quickly previewing tonight's game, Spurs Wizards. Can they get 3 wins in a row? Spurs, we'll find out. And then bring in our guest, Casey Viera. We're going to be discussing what is the Spurs blueprint for the rest of the rebuild and going forward. And we're going to address some of your Locked On Spurs fan YouTube comments. And just a quick heads up, Casey, as y'all know, he's a new dad. And likely he cannot do, well, pretty much for this point on, he can't do video. So he did an audio interview. So that's coming up next. So just a heads up, it is an audio portion with Casey. But about today's game, let's dig into it. Let's see what the Spurs and Wizards have cooking for us tonight at the Frost Center. The Spurs come into tonight's game 10-36. The Wizards are 8-37. Now the Spurs are 1-0 versus the Wizards this season. Let's rewind the clock. The Spurs are coming off a home win against the Wolves, 113-112. It was a very thrilling game. I was there. Let me tell you, that Frost Center was just rocking. Victor Wembanyama, 23 points and 10 rebounds. Sohan had 13 points, 4 rebounds. Keldon Johnson had 14 off the bench. Devin Vassell had 25 points in the win. Trey Jones, 12 points, 11 assists. And as far as the uniform watch is concerned, the Spurs will be in their Association Edition jerseys. All right, so what are we watching out for in tonight's game? Well, we'll always start with the visiting team, the Spurs opponent, so we'll do that again. Keep your eye on that scoreboard. Washington has scored 120-plus points in 5 of the last 6 meetings against the Spurs. So the Spurs got to have that defense going, try to slow that down. Yeah, it seems when Washington plays the Spurs, they look to light up the scoreboard. Now, the good news is that the Wizards, they don't fare well versus Western Conference team this season. This is their record versus the West, 2-10. That bodes well for your Spurs tonight, so keep an eye on that. And finally, when it comes to the Wizards facing teams that are below 500, like your Spurs, they actually don't fare well as well. They're actually 50%. They're 6-12. So they struggle against teams that are just as struggling as they are. So good news for the Spurs. Now, San Antonio, maybe it's bad news. Again, just as much as the Wizards struggle against Western Conference teams, Spurs struggle against Eastern Conference teams. The Spurs are 3-16 this season against East teams. So, yeah, again, not a good sign for the Spurs. And so I went ahead and just said, you know what? Well, if the Wizards struggle against sub-500 teams, how about the Spurs? How do they fare against sub-500 teams? They're also 6-12. So something's got to give tonight. Somebody's going to get closer to above, at 500 or above. So, the Spurs are 6-12 versus teams with the below 500 record. There's your quick Spurs Wizards preview. Coming up next, Casey Viera. Joining me, my colleague at Ken's 5. We're going to be discussing what is the Spurs blueprint moving forward and then address a couple of the Locked On Spurs fan YouTube comments. Passion, drive, patience. That's what brings home a winning trophy. It also keeps your ride or die pretty much alive. Yeah. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and live it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you need, what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit the first time, your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guarantee fit only available to U.S. customers. Hey, I want to talk about FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sundays is about scoring the best seats from the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Hey, look, Super Bowl Sunday. I mean, my goodness, it's all about the game, the food, the commercial, friends, the competition, the trash talk. It's all there. It's all fun. Hey, look, you can transition all that fun as well into, making bets, Super Bowl bets. So FanDuel has a way, many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Right now, not only can you place bets on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, well, you join today and you'll get $200. That's right, $200 in bonus bets for if your first bet of $500 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports book partner of the NFL. And we are back right here on Locked On Spurs with Casey Viera, my colleague at Ken's 5. Follow him on X at Casey_Viera. Casey, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, my friend. It feels like it's been a minute, right?
It feels like
I
it,
say that but then again, I don't we always kind of say that every time we go on, and then it ends up only being like 10 days tops.
Yeah, like a week or something like that passes by. Yeah, it goes by.
So
But
par for the
I'm
course.
exactly. Well, I'm glad you are back. And talk some Spurs basketball. Throw you some fan comments left on the Locked On Spurs YouTube page. Got some good ones for you. But first up, Casey. Popovich, he knows that the Spurs are still rebuilding, even though he should have said that from the get-go on media day. But nevertheless, we know what it is. They're still building. We get that. Fine. But after the recent game versus Thunder last week now, he was asked about the Thunder, their rebuild, and how they come along, and he was glowing about them, saying, "Yeah, Sam Presti, look at the job he's doing with the draft. Look at their veterans. Look at their young guys. Everything." It seems to me he definitely appreciates and respects what Oklahoma City is doing now to get them, as of this recording, to the top of the West. I mean, they're tied for first in the Western Conference.
Right.
The big question here, is that the blueprint the Spurs should follow, or should the Spurs just use their own blueprint and create one in their rebuild? It seems to me you see a lot of Spurs fans say, "Oh no, follow the Kings path, follow the Thunder path, follow the Magic path." Should the Spurs be following any path, or just make their one of their own?
I think kind of make one of themselves and maybe
Yeah.
use elements of it, so to speak, of Oklahoma City, because never in our lives, and this sounds dramatic, I'm sure we can dig back at some point, but in very recent history, I should say, modern history, have we seen a team just hoard picks the way that the Thunder have over the past, really, what year was the Paul George trade? That was 2019.
Yeah.
So summer of 2019. So since then, we have seen these guys just hoard picks after picks after picks. And to a lesser extent, the Spurs are doing that. They are hoarding picks, not to the degree that Oklahoma City did, but it's worked out. And then on the thought process of giving it time to develop, of course, that's been the crutch word here for however many years now that fans love. But if that is the route, yeah, you got to do it. Thankfully for them, they're in a spot where they have one shining star, truly shining star in the Waitons and Victor, just like it was for Oklahoma City at the time when, even before they had Chet and it was just SGA, that was one guy they were ready to build around. Chet came into the equation, And maybe something like that does come into the equation this offseason, this draft, and the Spurs can pull off something like that. So while I think it's just way too difficult to go the Oklahoma City route, because I think a lot of people are looking at that on the other side of the coin, and they're saying, no, we're not going to do you any favors. We're not going to keep giving you all these picks and some of these deals. We need something back.
Yeah.
So the book will be out on a certain point, but kind of doing it the way that they're doing, tinkering along the way and incorporating the Oklahoma City element to it, I don't think that's a terrible route to go at this point for what they have presently constructed and what's reasonably out there for them to do.
Yeah,
because
and also
if we're being honest, there's no immediate fix with this team right now. There's not.
And well, that's the thing, Casey. They have an opportunity for an immediate fix because of the draft picks they have and the young players that they can flip. Now, you look at two different circumstances. Sure, Popovich, applaud, the Thunder for what they've done to bring that team. Out of their big three era with Duncan, Durant, and Harden, then out of the Paul George era, then now where they are now in the SGA era, and now with Chet. But there's a common thread. I say a common thread, more like a thing that Oklahoma City did was they swung for the fences. They got SGA. And now look, I don't think anybody knew SGA was going to be SGA when he came from the Clippers.
No, not even the Clippers. All-star potential, sure, but top 8 to 10.
MVP, MVP, no. But the point is that they have something on their roster that the Spurs don't. They're going to have that. Is that a bona fide all-star? Wemby will be that eventually, but SGA is that now. And they've added veterans, Lou Dort. They drafted Smart, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. But if I look at like the suspects here, like the blueprints, like the Kings, the Thunder, or the Magic, I think you're right. I think you got to borrow a little bit from everything, but forge their own because they have Wemby. Their path is different because of Wemby. I think it was Mo Wagner of the Magic, Casey. They're obviously better now. They're definitely years ahead of the Spurs right now. And he said in the post-game conference, he goes, it took us about 2 to 3 years to get here. Perhaps that's like the biggest stepping stone right now for the Spurs rebuild is just laying the foundation of patience, because this is not going to happen next month, maybe not even next year, Casey.
Well, they're going to have to be because this year is already a wash.
Yeah, it's done.
So, so that's 1 year you got to be patient, and then next year the only way is up. I do think something needs to be done in terms of them making a move. I've kind of been in that camp for a while. I know it might sound a little contradictory, but it just feels like there's too much of the same thing at times. And there's just a lot of imbalance. And maybe that changes in the draft. And presumably they draft a point guard if they don't trade Vassell or Keldon Johnson if they don't do that. But I do think there is an element where they have to be assertive and shake things up a little bit.
I agree.
And if it means dealing some of these familiar faces that people know and love for the betterment, you got to do it. Very few players in this league have the label of being untouchable. They have one. Everybody else on that team is not touchable, and sometimes there's hard decisions to be made in order for the betterment of the franchise. Look, this summer, and I know the Celtics are light years ahead of where the Spurs are in development, but general idea of the concept of trading fan favorites. Marcus Smart was a god in that city, and they traded him and Robert Williams, also well-liked player, among other parts, and it turned that into Porzingis and Drew Holiday fell right in their lap. Tough decision that was made, moving fan favorites that they all know and love, but the betterment of the team, they're a hell of a lot better. Even something to a smaller magnitude, that you look at the Knicks with the OG Anunoby deal. Fans, they loved Quickly. Loved RJ Barrett, not to the degree they love Quickly, but they love those two guys. And they get OG Anunoby, and they're 11-2 over the past 13 or something like that. So, and I guess even on the Toronto side of that as well, those fans loved OG, but they needed a point guard, so they went out and they got Emmanuel quickly, who, by the way, I would love the Spurs to make a large push at in the offseason.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will. That's a different conversation we'll have on another Locked On.
Yeah.
But point being, though, when it comes to making tough decisions for the betterment of the franchise, a lot of the guys you like, you've grown to love, there's a chance they're not going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And if it means that, the Spurs need to do it. The Spurs definitely need to do it.
Yeah. I look at the Spurs situation and something's going to have to give. You know, as you mentioned, they cannot be holding on to these picks. I was shocked they haven't even traded some of them by now at all, especially on draft night, this past draft night, even with draft night before, the last season, 2 seasons ago. So, although their path is set, we know the course, and the course is going to be Wemby Avenue. That's it. You're going to build around him. And what did Pop say this season? Maybe like a month ago, he said, part of also a rebuild is looking at what you got on the roster and trying to sift out who's going to stick moving forward. So these guys are on notice that, hey, you may not be in San Antonio next season. And would you be surprised that this is a complete overhaul, or do you think they're just going to tinker in the offseason?
Well, I remember probably almost the exact wording that you said to me this time last year, and I was like, "Oh, it's going to be a completely different team next year," and it's not a completely different team next year.
Nope, not.
So
same
logic,
team.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much is.
Yeah.
Obviously, Victor the exception, but it's the same team. I think it'll be different this time next year. Because I've been of the belief that even though things have gone miserably, for the extent from a win-loss standpoint, have gone miserably wrong, I've always felt that this year was about seeing who works around Victor and who doesn't work around Victor. And what we've learned, there's a whole lot that does not work around Victor. Yeah, I mean, you look at the record right now, it speaks exactly to that. So the same general principle of what this season for me, I think, kind of means this. It feels the same, or I feel the same about that. But as a result, kind of piggybacking off what they're saying, now it's a matter of them being assertive and, like Pop said, the paraphrase here, identifying what's the long-term and short-term thing here that's going to work. And I think only thing I can do is kind of hold them to that and buy into what they're doing, that into them saying that. Though that being able to do that is becoming less and less more confident in seeing them actually follow through. But the fact that hearing Pop say that, not that I'm looking for any sort of validation, but because of it, you know what I mean? But essentially validating my thought process with it was saying this is a matter of sifting out what's going to work here with Victor for the future. That only tells me that, that's the plan, not as much the crutch word development, but just seeing what works around this guy. And if something's there in February, you make a move. If something's there in the summer, you make a move, because there's so many holes on this team right now. And I get it. I understand. I get it. We're all prisoners of the moment. We want to see things change on a drop of a hat, but it just doesn't work that way. They're not going to force themselves into a deal that is not going to better the team. That's not the way it works. But what they've learned right now is that a lot of things don't work around Victor, and they will. I think a move is coming. I do.
That's why I don't think they're going to be hyper active at the trade deadline. I think the usual suspects are going to be thrown out there in the reports: McDermott, Graham, Osman. But I think if they're going to swing it for the fences, it'll be this offseason, draft day.
I agree.
Yeah, they're positioned to get another top 5 pick. It's going to happen, but in a watered down draft. So, the rebuild will continue. But you look at what Pop had said, the GM, Sam Presti, he was saying, get the players they got. One thing he also has been saying lately is that these kids don't understand. And I will give you a good example. So Sean Elliott was a guest on San Antonio Sports Stars, The Blitz, and they were talking with him about the current roster. And Elliott, I thought this was very interesting, said that he had spoken to Popovich saying like, hey, you used to run this particular play with me and Timmy and Tony and Manu, and it would always work. We need a quick bucket. It'll always work. It was something where Tim would just find a way to give it to Tony. Tony would be cutting across, and it was a certain play. I think it was called floppy 4 or some floppy down, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. According to Elliott, Pop's response was, these kids just don't get it. And I thought that was very interesting, because what if this rebuild, this blueprint, follow the OKC path, whatever. What if it's just
it's like, what are we doing?
Get it? It's just,
it's like, it's like the food taste. The food tastes bad. My dinner tastes bad, but I also bought the wrong things to put it together. I tried.
Yeah.
I tried to make an Alfredo sauce out of butter.
Yeah. It's that scene from The Simpsons where Homer is making cereal and explodes into fire. Yeah.
I knew. I heard the exact same thing. I knew what you were referring to, and it's tough not to be critical. Like, okay, the general idea of that they're not getting it.
Yeah,
I understand that something's not registering, but then the onus kind of turns to, well, you were the guys who picked these guys. These are all
you, Brian Wright,
people.
Pop.
Yeah, you were the
everybody.
one that decided to employ these people, and I just that quote itself is just, to paraphrase, the idea of it is just wild. But I think what they do here is that they don't, going back to the trade deadline, I think they milk it as hard as they can with the Vassell's, the Keldons, the Jeremy Sohans, the guys who they want to get it, try to hammer it as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of those guys are moved at the deadline. I think they're all here.
Yeah.
And then summertime is where we see things start to have a little bit of fun, and maybe they make the move to get some of the guys who actually get it.
Absolutely. He is Casey Viera. Make sure to follow my next at Casey_Viera. He's my colleague at Ken's 5. He'll talk to you about what is going on the sports desk later on this episode. When we get back, we're going to throw some Locked On Spurs YouTube fan comments Casey's way. We're going to get his reaction. That's next, right here on Locked On Spurs.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Hey, I want to talk to you about Quiz.com. You heard that right. Quiz with 3 eyes. This episode of Locked On Spurs is brought to you by Quiz. Today, we're going to have some fun and test your Spurs knowledge. So we'll give you a question real fast. Should be an easy one for you. Which coach has led the Spurs to all 5 titles in their franchise history? Yeah, simple as that. You want to go to Quiz right now, get that app. Quiz with 3 eyes is the next generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Spurs fans, they even created a NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. Play with friends, other fans, let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. You can play without downloading anytime. Just go to app.quiz.com, 3 eyes, and start playing today. NBA Quiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball. Now, Popovich, right? Yeah, that was the answer to it. I mean, seriously, you can have so much fun using Quiz right now. Look, give it a try. Go tell us what your experience is. Guarantee you're going to have fun with it. Hey, maybe you can even compete with me and other Spurs fans. You want to go to app.quiz.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's Quiz with 3 eyes, just like the 3-pointer. Play now. Showcase your skills. Take home that cash. Take home some prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. Hey, San Antonio, do you stay up late catching the end of the Spurs game and in need of a pick-me-up? Look no further than Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Mudslingers is a locally owned independent coffee shop, and they're proud to make delicious coffee for our community. They do it fast, they do it friendly, so you can get on with your day. So whether you're in the mood for a latte, cold brew, Red Bull-infused lightning bolt series, they have drinks for every taste. They also have a wide selection of dairy alternatives, low-calorie options, even caffeine-free drinks for those who just want to take it easy. I go to Mudslingers. I love going to Mudslingers. Tom out there, he is such a friendly guy. He owns, operates, runs all the whole show there. Friendly staff, great menu, mini donuts. San Antonio loves it. If you're in San Antonio, you want to go there right now. Swing by Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee for a tasty and convenient caffeine fix. Located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 21 to 1604. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5-star reviews. Find them on X, Threads, Facebook, TikTok. They are everywhere. And who knows, maybe you can give them an idea and they'll make a drink in your honor. Life is too short for bland coffee. Go to Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now. And we're back on Locked On Spurs with Casey Viera, the only man in this planet, this galaxy, this world that can slow down Victor Wembanyama. Is that true? Hey, you got dad powers now. You got dad strength.
I do.
I know. You have a dad body. Well, I hope you don't have a dad body, but if you do,
I'm trying. Yeah. The metabolism ain't what it used to be. I will say that.
Just don't pull a Luka Doncic and kick people out of the arena for making fun of him.
Did you see what I tweeted at you the other day in response to that?
No. What happened?
So Luka, as we know, Luka gets the guy kicked out for called him fat on a treadmill. Yeah. Coach said, "Yeah, you're tired. You need to go on a treadmill." So my niece, 6-year-old niece, love her to death. I don't know where she learned some of the stuff that comes out of her mouth, but so I'm told that's what happens with kids. Dead, straight face comes up to me. She goes, "You're a dad now. You have to get jacked because you're a dad." And I'm like, "Girl, I'm running like an 8-minute mile these days. Where are you getting this from?" I was like, "You're gonna be my trainer? No, take a yoga class or something." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
Is she trying to tell you something without telling you something?
Yeah, I know. I was like, "Get out of my house, kid."
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here, niece. But come back when I need a babysitter, though. Come back when I need a babysitter.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Come back when I need a babysitter in like 7 years, and mom and dad gotta go out. In the meantime, leave me alone. Nobody asked your opinion, girl.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna hit.
This is what it's all about, Jeff. This is what I have to look forward to. Yeah.
So much fun, Casey. So much fun in the years ahead for you. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into some Locked On Spurs fan comments. We're going to pick a couple and get our reaction to what you're saying about the silver and black. And the first one up, get it here, is from, you're going to love this name. It's from None Ya Business. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I should have told her.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to know, or he's making a statement, and get your thoughts on this. He goes, "It's not even close anymore." He's talking about the Rookie of the Year race between Chet and Victor. Victor, has made a statement against Chet. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I don't think it's a race. I don't. I think logic is going to prevail here. Mm-hmm. I think logic is. I would think at least logic would prevail that this is an individual. This is not the MVP. This Rookie of the Year doesn't have any weight bearing. The voting should not have such weight bearing mm-hmm. on the result, or that the result, the win-loss shouldn't have. You know what I'm trying to say? Win-loss shouldn't bear as much weight mm-hmm. on the decision making compared to an MVP. Chet is fantastic. Chet is going to be a multi-time All-Star. It's not a commentary on what he can or he can't do, but Victor is just so elite right now. Any other year, Chet Holmgren is your Rookie of the Year. That's not gonna be this year. The things Victor's doing right now. I know that team is terrible. Mm-hmm. I understand that. I know that Oklahoma City team is fantastic right now. I understand that. It's an individualistic award. There's very, in my mind, the argument of Chet having SGA, the top 10 talent, is very much about if you're gonna make the 7 and whatever the Spurs record now is 7 and million. If you're gonna make the record of a valid argument against Wemby, I think you have to make the argument, which I don't necessarily agree with either, but the valid argument that SGA is playing that much of an impact on Holmgren's line too, and his growth, which he is, but I think logic ultimately prevails, and I think Victor wins.
Yeah, I think it's Victor's. He has not won the Rookie of the Month award. I think the next one is coming out soon, so I'm going to be more shocked if he doesn't win it this one. But even then, skill set wise, and if they keep it to an individual award, which it is, then Victor wins. But you do. I mean, I got a good glimpse of what maybe some Spurs fans are complaining about, as how the national media is still picking Chet. Just a couple of days ago, I think last week, Thursday, Friday, Stephen A. Smith was saying, his pick is still Chet because Chet is impacting the Thunder, and his performance as a rookie is leading them to the number one spot in the West, along with the rest of the group. So there's still that thing of, it's individual, but they look at the team, but if you just stick to the individual numbers record side, it's Victor's.
You have to. And that's not me saying that. This is me saying it from an unbiased lens here, separating from the Spurs label umbrella that we're talking under right now. You can't, if Chet Holmgren, in my mind, if you flip it here, you put Chet Holmgren on this team right now instead of Victor Wembanyama. Are they infinitely better than 7 and 31?
Infinitely better? No.
Yeah. No, they're right around the same thing.
Yeah.
If Victor's putting up the same line on the Thunder, they're also Yeah. I don't understand how the logic. There's just too much surrounding Chet right now that while he is good and he has been impacting it, Chet's not the guy. The reason that team is the best team in the Western Conference right now. He's just not. Yeah. He's not. It's SGA. Chet's part of it. Yeah. Chet's part of it. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Next comment comes from that guy, Joe 3649. This is about Devin Vassell. He says Vassell really does need to be more aggressive attacking the rim, but maybe he doesn't feel confident because of the turnovers? ? He does have a handle, but I think he has real room for improvement, which could help in his driving and shot creation. Now, he's bringing this up, Casey, because last week we did an episode on spotlighting Vassell, and has he really progressed? And it was kind of 50-50, like, yes, he has, but then no, he hasn't. And, but yes, he has, but nah, and then there's his inconsistency, his inability to sometimes blend in with other players. So, and by the way, thank you, that guy, Joe 3649, for the comment here. What do you think about what that guy, Joe, had to say?
Very upbeat, cheery dude.
Yeah, always upbeat.
Never gives the vibe of a guy who, rides too high or too low. Just a pretty level-headed, neutral guy. My thing with him, I know the shot selection drives people crazy. It drives people nuts, and admittedly, you watch it and you're like, "What?" There are too many times where you're just head in hand saying, "Dude, what are you doing?" But there are times where he's shown that you're like, "Oh, it's actually a decent bad shot maker here." My issue is just the consistency.
For me,
and for me, that's the more pressing concern as opposed to the shot selection, because there are a lot of players in this league who have terrible shot selection but can still impact the game immensely and be a very good player on this team with their poor shot selection, what they do. And more often than not, when Devin Vassell steps off the floor at the end of the day, you're saying, hey, he's had you're in this game because of Devin Vassell, as opposed to you are out of this game because of Devin Vassell. My thing is that the out of the games because of Devin Vassell, that's the concerning part, was that if this team is going to go anywhere of note and he's going to be a part of it, that's the thing in my mind that needs to change, because they won't win at a consistent level, even average level. Of course, they're not a level right now, period. But at an average level, if he's playing as inconsistent as he is right now, when he's on, I mean, he's kind of like a dialed down, not as dramatic version of J.R. Smith. You know, like with J.R. when J.R. was cooking, man, and the same thing with Devin Vassell. When he's like really got his stroke going and that basket's looking like the ocean, I mean, you're putting that in the conversation with anybody. The only problem is you're getting those games, what, 2-3 of those a year now? When if this team really needs to take that next step.
Yeah. And the good news is that in the last string of games heading into last week's game versus the Blazers, you know, he's had double figure scoring. So yay, there's that, you know, so he's getting that. For me, it's just a free throw attempts. You know, I would love to see him being a lot more aggressive, getting to the rim. And I think he could pick up some quick, easy fouls in that department. And of course, it'll open up the rest of his game.
Well, that's another thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're getting to the line to put a couple more points on the board, like you're saying, and getting a couple of those easier shots, you're getting your confidence back earlier, and that other stuff comes into play a little bit. It's a lot better to feel a lot better about yourself if you're starting the game 3 of 8 from the field as opposed to 1 of 8 from the field. So yeah, I do agree with that sense with you too. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. Some fan comments left on the Locked On Spurs YouTube page. So go there right now, subscribe, and leave your comments, and maybe we'll read your comment on a future episode of Locked On Spurs. Casey, what is going on in your neck of the woods on the Ken's 5 Sports Desk?
Oh, what's going on? Let me think.
Cowboys, right? Oh, sorry. Too soon? Too soon?
not them. Not the Cowboys. I'll tell you that much.
Hey, we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Ken's 5 Plus app. Can't forget that. And much, much more. Locked On Sports, I should say, has a new 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So it's all the local shows, all the national, regional shows, from MLB to NFL to NBA, all there, 24/7 live streaming, only on YouTube. Go subscribe. Locked On Sports today. Casey, it's been a pleasure as always.
Likewise.
Go work on that. Or actually, I say don't work on that dad bod. Don't get the dad bod.
No. No.
Yeah, don't do that. We'll be back tomorrow, and I believe we're going to have Mike Taylor of the Mike Taylor Show joining us, and we're talking all things silver and black. So for Casey Viera, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.